I'm coming to you today to ask for your help in bringing together an incredible project, the Community Mindfulness Center. This inclusive space is intended to promote the well-being of our community locally and abroad, as well as to help us discover a sense of well-being and basic goodness. We are trying to raise $1 million for this state-of-the-art facility, which will provide both spiritual and secular programming. We really hope that you can come together to help us make this dream into a reality.
The path is a diamond. I'm talking about the Buddhist path, the path of awakening, the path of seeing the truth. And that has lots of different areas and stages, and starting out with something like just looking at what's happening instead of starting to fix something, work with something based on what you think is happening. Quite a big mistake. When you say to start to repair, fix, move, change, do anything until you really have an idea what it is. This is especially true with the mind stream. That's why there's such a thing as this 2,500-year-old spiritual path. Path is a diamond. It is indestructible. It is adamantine. It is without beginning, without end. And it's available. And is it easy to find? No. It was a path of awareness, not just as a thinking process, calculating, figuring out how to get this done, how to get that, how to get more of anything. Spiritual materialism, materialism, psychological materialism, gaining ideas. It works relatively, but it doesn't work with the fundamental situation that we need to address, which is passion, aggression, ignorance, hope, fear, war, pride, envy, shame, and guilt. And it just goes on, all kinds of words that describe or endeavor to describe or name the challenges we have. War and peace is a big one. The one that we make incredible assumptions about because we've never really looked at it. There's life and death. We just assume that there's life and who knows what happens after death. Well, you can find that out, but you're not going to find it out through a book, though a book may support you. You're not going to find it out through a teacher, though a teacher may support you. You're not going to find it out through a community, or a community may support you in looking. Depends on the community as to what you'll be looking at. Depends on the teacher. Depends on the teaching. In our situation as practitioners of the Buddha's Dharma, students of the truth of the Buddha, it's the three jewels, or the teacher, the teaching, the community. Those three seem to operate pretty well to support any one of us. For some of us, one part of it may be more important than the other, and then maybe 3 years later, it starts to change into another angle or dimension. Path is a diamond. It's indestructible. Why? It is uncreated. Something has not been created. When I say something, I have to use some kind of a word, so I have to use the word thing. But some dynamic or some understanding is not created. Therefore, it's available, and you cannot stop it. You cannot start it. And it is hard enough just to walk on it. This is a diamond. Indestructible. The fancy word, of course, is adamantine. It's the word in Tibetan tradition is a dorje, and Sanskrit is vajra. Sometimes the awakening is called the vajra-like samadhi. The vajra, or the indestructible, or the diamond-like awakening, it can't be destroyed because it has not occurred. If it occurs, it's going away. It is subject to the 5 or the 4 or the 3 marks of existence. One of them being impermanence. If it shows up, it won't last. If it shows up, it's going to change, going to go away, going to flip, going to flop. We all know this. Just watch your own mind stream. This is what sitting practice of meditation is about, shikantaza. And I would even include very simple mindfulness practice, which is about working with the awareness in a very simple, direct way, using forms. Indestructible. That's available to you. It's very difficult for me, as a longtime meditator and as someone who presumes to even sit in front of a group of people and talk about something someone said 2,500 years ago, or something that my teacher said. that I heard him say 35 or 40 years ago, either one of my teachers, long time ago. Friendly fly. In the Zen tradition, both Korean Zen, Japanese Zen, there's the difficulty in expressing what, after one has practiced and meditated for a long time, the difficulty in doing that starts to show up, and we realize it's hard to say. We're seeing it. We know what this is, a kind of knowledge that goes beyond the relative knowledge. So the koan, or the public case, or the kong'an in Chinese pronunciation, comes up as, what is the sound of one hand clapping, which is a pretty popular one that people know about. Why did Bodhidharma, or the teacher who brought Buddhism to China, at least it's told that way, brought Zen, or mind-only school? Why did Bodhidharma come from the West? Well, it's simple. Well, he came from the West, but probably was sick of the East, or he's trying to get away from his spouse. I don't think he had a spouse, did he? Well, who knows? But that's why it puts your mind in that. Well, why did this happen? Because of that. Well, no, there's a deeper understanding. So those are sometimes used to convey the difficulty in even understanding conceptually, logically, rationally what this is about. That supports the mundane path of getting better, improving, stopping bad habits, all those things. But to see fundamentally what this is, it seems to be necessary to short circuit that area that grasps, that rejects passion, aggression, and ignorance, those three poisons. Those areas are described in that way to show you or me or any of us how taking a position on anything stops our fundamental understanding, perception of what this is, fundamental perception of what this is basically, the basis of it. Yes, sir.
Shoto bowing. How is the spiritual path not separate from the mundane path?
But it's not separate. Separated, but fundamentally not separate. But if you don't know about the spiritual path, you'll keep trying to reach spiritual goals through material means, which is what Trungpa Rinpoche, a series of his talks written back in the early 70s, or talks given at Karme Choling, then called Tail of the Tiger, that were put into book form that we study once a week here and once a week a couple of other places in other groups, talking about trying to get somewhere using a grasping, reinforcing the grasping idea, the concluding idea. So it seems to be necessary, coming back to your question, seems to be necessary to have an understanding of both of those. And the way, probably other ways, but the way my understanding of that is to train your mind to see what this is clearly, with a clear perception that is not particularly clouded by hope or fear, not particularly clouded by the grid that is set up by the protective area of the self-centeredness, our ego, which doesn't want to be wrong, doesn't want to be mistaken. And if we are challenged in any way, we have ready-made answers to protect that instead of just losing a battle. More about it if you have it.
Shoto bowing. If we've begun to relate to our life as a spiritual path, is it possible for the mundane path to cover that back up?
Sure. Very possible. This is why I teach by saying just return to it. Don't try to maintain it, because then that maintenance, the direction of maintenance takes us into the materiality where it looks like we can control things. You really can't control much, maybe a little bit, but even that is a featherweight. There's no big success story in that area as far as the spiritual path is concerned. More about it if you have it. I can go a few different directions, but I would like to go the one you're asking about.
Shoto bowing. If we see that we're drifting into the mundane path, does it still have a spiritual path component to it?
I think so. I think once you begin that, then yes, it could. Want to be more specific, or are you just going to go around in circles and hope for the best?
So we're going, if I can pick on Chokodawa, it's in the area.
That guy?
Yes. His question was yesterday,
You won't mind.
around our vow actually possibly taking us in a way that looks like it's away from the path
Yes.
or away from the situation.
Yes. So that's why it's necessary to have the three jewels to relate to the teacher and what is being taught and the community of people like we have here that are studying this material. Not that we're going to vote on it, but we discuss this. If you notice when we discuss this and we have like the 30 verses or the works of Dogen Zenji or Trungpa Rinpoche, that we talk about this material, these concepts, these ideas that are pointing to the Buddha's Dharma, with the idea of helping us see more clearly what is happening in our life in terms of passion, aggression, ignorance, hope and fear, grasping, rejecting, so that we can begin to live a spiritual life dedicated to others. And you could, coming back to Tokugawa's area, he has two sons who he loves very much. I'm sure that's quite challenging sometimes to look at that situation. I'm not speaking in your place, but maybe I should be back there with them. Did you ever think of that?
Not much.
Okay, see? Diamond path. Path is a diamond, but it will not show up conceptually. That only works so far. Once you begin to understand that, you realize it's choiceless. You have to do this. That doesn't mean that you could move down to Ohio, leave this area. But talking to your teacher is probably going to say, stay here. I would probably say that to anybody who's a fully ordained monk and who's living here. I'm old, so I would like you to stay here as long as you can. But it's not an order. That's just how it looks to me. I'm looking at it and I'm biased. I want this community, not only the monastery, which is where the difficult training, mind training goes, but also the mindfulness center, which is, we're trying to get that to happen. That's not necessarily light duty. I'm not saying this is the university and that over there is grade school. No, it's the people that come into that situation. They bring the heavy duty work in there. They do that there. It's karma is very difficult for everyone, but the people that would come into the mindfulness center, there may be the preconceptions, the cultural difficulties and preconceptions around it. Someone might never even walk into a monastery, but you live here. And so if you leave this monastery, I would say, what have I already said to you? Not a good idea. But if you say, what if I want to go? I will say, I will wish you well. But you would have to ask me directly. It's happened before. More? Please don't hold back. I certainly won't. Tom.
Thomas bowing.
Thomas.
You find yourself being attached to the path. Wouldn't it be beneficial to do something the exact opposite?
So speak a little louder, and also either paraphrase or just repeat what you said. I missed a little bit of it.
If you find yourself being attached to the path, would it be beneficial to do something the exact opposite?
I wouldn't come up with a formula. So when you ask me the question, I can see where that's can be difficult. On the other hand, the way that I talk about this, I'm sure you heard it already, is be aware of what you're doing or what is happening rather than doing something about it. I even say, don't do anything unless you absolutely have to do it, or don't do anything unless you have to. And that way you won't do as much. This is another way of saying this is patience. It's not, I mean, that may not work for you, but it certainly does for me. Just sit still and watch the movement. Watching the movement is patience. And it might be, sitting in the waiting room, seeing everybody else getting taken care of before you. It can be very frustrating, but the causes and conditions that are there, sometimes they're hidden. It's hard to see what's going on in the other rooms. Like in whatever I don't even really need to know what you're talking about. But what I would say, and I'm biased here, I would say based on what I've been doing for a while, train your mind so that every time you look at that, you see a different facet of it. of something maybe you're trying to get away from or something you're trying to get a deeper understanding of. So I would say you're here, you've been in this Denkaway retreat since it started, 2 more days to go. Further question around that? Does something come up based on what I just said?
Valley. One of the first Dharma talks we had, he talked about the fool following the folly and wisdom. That is still essentially the path if you're not attached to that or the opposite.
The fool who continues in his folly will eventually become wise. That's a.
Without being attached to it.
Did I say that?
Okay.
So that is no guarantee, but what would have to happen there is a lot of observing. So anybody who continues to do something that is out of balance or maybe difficult or challenging or foolish, if there's a lot of awareness there's no guarantee of it, but usually someone who's foolish eventually is going to try to change it or do something different or be more wise based on concepts, ideas, judgments, and social structures. Go ahead. Thank you. Yes, sir. Eric.
Eric Bowing, the path being a diamond, how do we take what we need and leave the rest in that path?
So simply put, and I don't, if anyone else asks that question, it might be a different shape or a different way of responding to it, depending on my relationship to anyone here. My advice to you is sit a lot. Sit a lot so that actually, without even doing anything, that starts to weed out just by watching what arises in the mind. Watch the motion. Hold the body as still as possible without being rigid. This doesn't mean you shouldn't move, but when you do move, make it intentional. You know you're moving, you know you're adjusting. And then when you return to stillness, hold still. Because if you have just even your tongue moving around in your mouth, that actually shrinks. And this is my perception of it. Anyone else can say, well, that doesn't really happen. I've been meditating for 35 years and that doesn't happen to me. So that could happen. But anytime you make any movement anywhere without it being a deliberate movement, in other words, just an unconscious wiggling of this or that, anything, you actually take the energy out of that part of consciousness we call the observer. Hold still and observe what moves. That might be your stomach growling, could be your diaphragm, but you wouldn't necessarily hold on to that. This actually ties into, maybe not directly from the way you're perceiving it, but ties in directly to the first part of your question, which was what?
With the path being a diamond, how do we take what we need and leave the rest?
Don't do anything with it. Don't take what you need. Don't take anything. Don't leave the rest. There isn't any rest. Just train your mind. Return to the cushion. Return to the teacher, the teaching, the community, the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, in whatever, however much you can, as much as you can. Some people need to live here. Other people don't. There's no requirement. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Neil Kabowing, how is the Sangha a diamond? Especially when you've spoken of it. I forgot which teacher said it was a garbage pit. How does
Coben.
that show up?
How could you forget that? Coben said that.
Coben.
Who's Coben?
He is our Soto lineage holder and was your second teacher after Trungpa Rinpoche.
So what does he want to know?
What aspects of Sangha are like a diamond? Or what are you pointing at with this talk title?
Because they're not separate from the teaching of the Dharma, and they're not separate from the teacher. And only the teacher or the Buddha is going to see that. And there's no proof, there's no evidence for that. That's why it's a spiritual path and not a mundane path. Who's right, who's wrong, who sees the truth, who doesn't. What is the truth? What isn't it? All of that. So you return. Some ways of receiving the refuge vow is one of the ways we say is I return to Buddha, return to Dharma. Return to Sangha. Return to Buddha is done. Return to Dharma is done. Return to Sangha it is done. More? Excuse me.
Is there a way that intention reveals some of the facets of the diamond?
Say more. Or paraphrase your question.
When there is difficulty and we have the intention to just look at it, is there some aspect of the diamond that can help us with that?
Yes. That which is observing is like a diamond. But then we cover it up. Fear, cover it up. Cover that up. Cover that incredible wisdom mind. Cover it up with right and wrong, up and down, life and death, should be, shouldn't be. So, but then if you return, eventually it just stops covering up. It's like you wore it out. You wore out the covering dynamic because fearlessness no longer has you by the short hairs.
Kabali, will the covering always look like a flaw?
Perhaps. What are you driving at?
Kabali, sometimes it feels like it sneaks in there as looking like a benefit.
Really? Which one is that?
When I think I'm Kabali, when I think I'm getting more peaceful, or
Oh,
I'm talking, I guess, in the area of spiritual materialism.
oh yeah. Yeah, you're not. Did you want that or some other answer?
Don't know.
So the positionality, this is a difficult thing to point at because anytime we point at something, its opposite shows up. So you can't really point at it. So how could anybody saw what this was point at any damn thing? That's one of those rhetorical questions. I don't want to drag you over the lid of the dungeon. Yeah, have something else.
Kabali, is there? I want to use the diamond as an example, but I'm not coming out of it. But is there a directness that needs to happen?
So the intention is the directness. And when you begin to see what this is, then there's no maintenance happening. It's just always the case. Nothing can cover it up because you see that it's an illusion. You just know what it is. There's no, it's called, if it shows up relatively in some way, appears that way. It's called unconditional confidence. It's not based on any conditions that validate anything, you or anything else. There is no separation there, and you're looking at it. And what is that? What is it? Don't know. Somebody had a little cat back there. What? There's a cat outside the building? Okay. More? It's a good area to ask in if you want to keep going, and I'm happy to respond.
Not right now.
Do you want to respond to him? Okay. Yes, sir. What does that word mean, Fa Yun? What is that?
Fa Yun, Dharma cloud.
So Fa is Dharma. Yun must be cloud. Okay. Okay, let's see how that works.
Fa Yun bowing.
Yes, sir.
This concept you brought up, the any movement that is not deliberate draws the consciousness away from the observer. Did I get that right?
Takes the energy away from that part of the consciousness that's able to receive because it's producing something. It's just a way of talking about it. I have no proof of anything. But you'll notice if I talk to you, I'll say about your practice, I'll say hold still, but don't be rigid. Then there's all kind of energy goes into holding still. Just simply hold still. And if your body continues to move, like yours does with your back situation, which I'm looking at. It's about the awareness of that, not controlling that or stopping. It's been misunderstood where teachers have said in the past, even if you're in pain, you should sit still anyway. This is even contemporary in this country. Is sometimes that's done where people are told that they need to just sit through the pain or through the difficulty. And we've talked a little bit about your situation. And I say, well, take care of yourself, basically. Pay attention to your body. So if you do move, then you're aware of that. If you get up and leave the room, there's awareness there. If you're sitting still, and I have a student, I don't know if he's not here right now, who moves quite a bit. And I say you don't have to fix that or change it, just have to be aware that movement is happening. So it's always about awareness, never about some kind of artificial stillness based on control or some kind of macho, I'm going to muscle through and never move an inch because I want to see the ultimate reality that is without this or that or whatever. More.
Does the movement include expressive thought as well, not just physical movement?
Yes, that's basically I'm talking about any kind of movement, watching the mind go this way and that way in a daydream, noticing you're tipping forward. My practice when I don't get enough sleep is, or sometimes even when I get enough sleep, is notice how trying to see when I fall asleep. I've never been very good at that. How about you guys? Like, when is that point when you fall asleep? If you could see that point, would you fall asleep? Sitting. Then I notice I'm here again. Some of you sit close to me, see me fall asleep. You see me fall asleep. Occasionally out of the corner of your eye. You see out of the back of your head. So, and the way I teach around that, talking about movement, I emphasize this, and I didn't emphasize this 20, 30 years ago. Pardon me. But I do today. I emphasize just watch the movement. Give yourself a break. Your body is doing whatever it's doing because it needs to do that based on causes and conditions. It's not a success story to hold very still and never move. But if you can hold still and not move, then I recommend it. But don't make a project out of that of trying to get somewhere and prove something. Yes, sir.
Bowing and bowing. So when you find yourself in not deliberate movement, it's returning to the observing. Is that the awareness?
What?
Is that where the awareness occurs?
It's a subtle area. I don't know if I can point out the exact crossroads where that banjo is being played, but that's right. And I'm thinking of "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?" Remember that movie? That's what showed up. I'm not sure why. It was a location. So that location is there, but it's not something you can actually find. Some kind of gravity will take you there. It's in the movement itself. The awareness is in the movement. Your awareness is not separate from what moves. It just looks like it. It looks like I'm over here being aware of my hand moving, or my hand going here or there, or stretching, or having pain in my back and trying to ease that. Whereas just observe it as much as you can. If you can do that, then your body, instead of having some resistance, then your body, the intelligence of your body, will continue to use the division of body and mind, which operates quite clearly in terms of relative truth, might actually know what to do to fundamentally help that pain, rather than have the self-centered mind, the ego mind, or the part that's trying to keep you from moving. So that's why I say if your body is yelling at you, get up and leave the room, go somewhere else. Have any feedback on that body movement stuff that you've gone through?
Just occasionally would try to go just past the impulse to move. So the impulse to move comes up and usually I'm moving without seeing the impulse. And so I've tried a little bit to put some tension to see what's on the other side of that initial
Yeah.
intense impulse. And that has helped me understand more what the movement is about.
Very good. That reminds me, were you the one that was talking about, somebody gave that a name in a different medium? Was that you? Or that said there's a name for that going, was that you? By you? Or something, or was it you that said where there's some, maybe it's weightlifting or something like that, or exercise where you go, and when you're just about ready to give up, you go, 20 seconds further into it, so you get a better idea. Similar kind of.
Sounds like
Yeah. Was that? Was that something you said? Okay, fess up. Who said that? Not gonna happen. We have a little bit of time. If there was any other question about the path of the diamond? Yes, sir.
Sokuzan, when you say the path, or do you mean ground path and fruition are part of the diamond
All of that.
and the 3 jewels?
All of it. Yes.
So when I feel like we've also said that all of that is pointing at the truth.
Yes.
So when that kind of falls apart,
Yes. The point
is that the diamond
that's
supporting all of that?
it's a way of talking about it. Fundamentally, it's not even indestructible. It's never been created. You're getting close to the fundamental nature of consciousness. When I say close is not it. But eventually there's no, even the close part. You just don't have any questions about anything anymore. Whatever occurs is just what it is. Even your own causes and conditions that might be could be coming out of a past life, or something that happened to you when you're 4 years old. Anything interrupts, you're no longer concerned about what's happening in your mind stream, because you can see there's no solid being there. There never was. You can see that, so you're no longer perplexed by anything that occurs. But people around you are suffering, so you may want to see if there's a way you can help them.
Sokuzan, I'm wondering, all that feels like it's always falling apart. So it doesn't feel like a diamond to me. It just feels like a bunch
Well,
of
how does it
stuff
feel? How does it feel?
falling apart.
Well, don't believe your feelings. That's an illusion.
Okay.
Don't disbelieve your feelings, and don't ignore them. That which is observing what I just said is indestructible. And if you start to believe it, then you identify with it. Then the illusion of a self that's feeling this, the illusion of a self that doesn't feel that, and the illusion of a self that can't get control or can get complete control. Illusion. But that which just observes, it's not the observer, it's not an identity is indestructible, because it doesn't come about. Don't stop there.
I'm looking for the question.
What's showing up in place of it?
Confusion.
I rest my case. That's called awareness. It's called confusion to someone who's trying to fight with it, get rid of it, justify it, condemn it, find excuses for it, take it to court, do anything with it. Don't do anything. Don't do anything. Be confused. Be the crap you're trying to get rid of, at least for a while, so you actually can be your own meditation instructor.
Sokuzan, I just don't see how the path is a diamond.
Well, we're just using the idea that it's actually not. It's a ruby.
A jewel.
It's a jewel. Jules Levinson. So I'm just using that because I'm endeavoring to point to that part of consciousness that has no density to it. There's nothing there, because a kettle of water is not aware of a cup sitting in the sink, and a cup sitting in the sink is not aware of a window. So what is it that's aware of the kettle? aware, can you have a location? Sure, we can impute something here in this, where the eyes are, the ears, and this is all pretty convincing part of the illusion. But you're not this, I'm not this. You're not what's going to walk out of this room in a few minutes. Not very many minutes.
So is the illusion a diamond?
Say more.
Because it's not separate from the awareness that's the actual diamond. If we separate them,
So talking about actual and fake diamonds?
kind of, because when I asked those questions, you kind of flipped it into awareness,
I do.
and I was aware of the confusion. So the path is confusing.
Yeah.
It's confusion, basically. It falls apart. You're on the path, you're not on
Yes.
the path, it's all the path. But there's an awareness watching that.
Yes, there is. So far,
Is that what you're pointing at as the
I'm
diamond?
saying that which is observing and that which is being observed, the confusion, are not two different things. That's the diamond. Yeah, no? Who's laughing? Yes, sir.
Milk Bowing School String in the UK has a question. Is there anything after awareness? Bowing.
The whole after and before is part of the illusion. Past and future, present, those are just all words for the same thing. And what is it? What is the same thing? This, it's right here. Yeah. Future.
Bowing. What did you mean when you said the path is not easy to find?
Good question. Where's that dragon at today?
At home.
In the cave of the dragon. What's that cave called?
Hidden Mountain.
That's how we can't find him. Hidden mountain. Yeah. Okay. What's your question again?
What did you mean when you said the path is not easy to find?
So it's difficult to find, even if you're on it, or if you're in it, if you're a monk, you can still get confused by it and start to believe your thoughts and your emotions, your feelings. You can do that. You can also be a person who will never hear the words of the true spiritual path, whether it be Buddhism or some other understanding. Because when it's so tied up in movement, the movement of getting to the grocery store, getting to the job, taking care of the kids, fixing a hole in the roof, all the various things that can take up your whole life, this particular lifetime. There's no guarantee you'll be back here, or that you would even want to be back here as a human being. This is not Michigan. This is just a place on a big ball of dirt in the middle of nowhere, and we show up and give it some kind of meaning. And when this body mind complex goes away, you could be what is called reborn somewhere else, where there is no Dharma, in a century or in a place or in a planet or some other kind of dimension. There's no guarantee of anything. When death comes, with a warning or without a warning, that's this body goes back into the elements. The consciousness does not go away. We're not sure exactly what it does, because the differentiation and desire that is happening in the lifetime, it's a little easier to track. But when that same situation shows up in a consciousness that no longer has a reference point as the body, and is creating that body out of a memory of a body, not an easy place to be in without some kind of understanding that you are able to develop as a living being. This is your opportunity to find it. You don't have to be a student of mine or be a monk or worship the Buddha or be a Buddhist or anything. The path may show up in a different way for each person. The spiritual path is very difficult because the mundane path is so magnetic and so inviting and so seductive and so. And it's not about avoiding that and going to a mountaintop like some people do. Well, that might help somewhat, but it's about seeing what this is, not what you think it is. And it's difficult because everything, to go back to your question, because everything is so, the simple word is seductive, and enticing and or off-putting. I don't want that. Those guys are worshiping golden idols. Who needs that? I'm going to go back to civil mind control or Scientology, someplace where there's some truth. See how crazy it can be? It's very difficult to find a true path, and a true teacher, true teaching, and a true community. Very, very difficult. And have you found one here? Yes or no? I think you have. You're shaking your head, yes. I think so, but that's just how it looks to me. But it looks otherwise to you, then keep the principal witness. I know who you are. I know who this is, who that person is, yourself. More? Thank you. We can take one more question and then we can close, since it's time for karaoke, I think. Is there another one? Oh, Sean, haven't had one from you.
Parshan Bowing, is the diamond a quality of the path?
I think he probably could use that. Using a diamond just means indestructible. Can't be gotten rid of because the path is not. It has aspects. It has qualities there. So I would say the diamond is just a metaphor or an image to say it's valuable. That's diamond, and it's indestructible. I'm not saying you couldn't smash a diamond, but you know the images only go so far. So that's where I'm at with it. Why I use that. Diamond also is a name for another interchangeable name for the Vajrayana, or the indestructible, the Vajra scepter, which represents a lightning bolt, which is instantaneous, but it's pretty hard to destroy it. More?
Parshan Bowing, is what you're trying to describe as a diamond something that can be perceived? Now,
I think there's an inspiration that comes up that if you try to do anything with it, it just comes apart. But there's an inspiration that comes up that if you don't do anything with it, because it has no value, there's no relative value, it has no opposite. So then I think it's a kind of understanding that let's put it this way, you just know it. You know, it doesn't matter what happens. I just gave a talk. It doesn't matter what happens. I don't mean that. Doesn't matter that we shouldn't protect ourselves from crime or from illness, and protect for all the relative things to keep our bodies going. But the fundamental understanding, it really can't matter, because if it matters, then we're right back to try to manipulate, control, make sure bad things don't happen. When bad things happen to good people, isn't that a book somewhere? I say when good things happen to bad people, you don't deserve that. Good things happening to bad people. Who wrote that book? You want to write that book? I bet you could do that. I mean, just with your imagination, you do that. Don't do that. Okay, that would be bad. So what am I saying? I'm saying it's a quality, an understanding that doesn't have any. There's nothing convincing about it. It's just if you've looked at relative truth long enough, and you've looked at your own discursiveness and your own insanity long enough and understood you cannot get rid of that, and you eventually over a long period of time realize, well, the reason you can't get rid of that is not real. When you see that, it's just like living in a movie 24/7. Everybody in there, the most wonderful person, illusion. The most horrible person, illusion. Don't believe, and I say this, I've always followed it up this way. Don't believe anything I'm saying. I'm not here to convince you. I don't care what you do. I don't care what you do. But who was the teacher that said that? Wei Shan. I just want you, if you're a student of mine, if you're for the next 10 minutes or 3 minutes, I guess, or less, I just want to help you see more clearly. If you see clearly, you will see that this is an illusion, and that which sees the illusion, there's no one there. There's no observer there. It is empty of an observer and empty of what is being observed. So what is it? Find out. I don't have words for it, but I'm looking at it and have been for a while. Yeah. Very good. Thank you so much.
I'm coming to you today to ask for your help in bringing together an incredible project, the Community Mindfulness Center. This inclusive space is intended to promote the well-being of our community locally and abroad, as well as to help us discover a sense of well-being and basic goodness. We are trying to raise $1 million for this state-of-the-art facility, which will provide both spiritual and secular programming. We really hope that you can come together to help us make this dream into a reality.